Dr. Hanako stood before the assembled scholars in the grand observation hall of the Galactic Council Research Station. Her forearms moved gracefully as she gestured toward the holographic display floating above the platform. The display showed images of human soldiers from 2 centuries ago, frozen in combat poses that looked almost theatrical to her trained eye. "And here we see another example of obvious exaggeration," Hana said, her voice carrying the confident tone of someone who had spent years studying her subject. "The historical records claim this human soldier ran for 3 days straight, while carrying a wounded companion. 3 days. Without stopping." She paused, letting soft laughter ripple through the audience of fellow Talvari scholars. The biological impossibility of such a feat should be apparent to anyone with basic xenophysiology training. Hana's research assistant, Juno Park, sat in the front row, nodding along enthusiastically. Juno had helped compile the data for this presentation, and she shared Hana's skepticism about the so-called human expansion wars legends. "Every species has its warriors," Hana continued, switching the display to show combat records from various galactic races. "The Skrell have superior strength. The Vextar have enhanced reflexes. The Korthan have natural armor plating. But humans," she brought up an anatomical diagram of a human body. "Humans are average in almost every measurable category. Yet somehow the stories would have us believe they are the most dangerous warriors in the known galaxy." In the back of the lecture hall, barely visible among the crowd, sat a human in a simple security uniform. Corporal Dae Kim had finished his patrol shift early and decided to attend the lecture out of curiosity. His expression remained neutral as he listened to Dr. Ko systematically dismantle every story about human combat capability. "The myth of the Death Worlder is particularly amusing," Hana said, warming to her subject. "Yes, Earth has slightly higher gravity than average. Yes, it has more predators than some worlds. But the leap from these facts to claiming humans are unstoppable warriors? That is not science. That is propaganda." Day shifted slightly in his seat. He had heard similar opinions before. Many species in the galactic community viewed humans as self-aggrandizing, prone to exaggerating their own importance. He did not take offense. Let them believe what they wanted. After the lecture ended, the scholars gathered in small groups to discuss Hana's findings. She stood at the center of the largest group, answering questions with the ease of an expert in her field. "Dr. Ko, what about the documented cases of human soldiers continuing to fight after sustaining injuries that would kill most species?" asked an elderly Talvari professor. Hana smiled patiently. "Combat reports are notoriously unreliable, Professor, written in the heat of battle, often by untrained observers. I suspect most of these miraculous survivals are simply cases of misreported injury severity." Day made his way toward the exit, weaving through the crowd. As he passed near Hana's group, he accidentally made eye contact with her. She looked at him with brief curiosity, perhaps noting his species, then returned to her conversation. To her, he was just another station worker, unremarkable in every way. The research station orbited Vedara, a neutral world that served as a hub for academic collaboration between the many species of the Galactic Council. The station housed over 300 researchers, support staff, and security personnel. It was a peaceful place, dedicated to the pursuit of knowledge rather than the conflicts that occasionally flared up in other sectors of the galaxy. Day reported to the security office for his next shift assignment. Commander Yunnam, a stern-faced human woman in her 50s, looked up from her desk as he entered. "How was the lecture?" Hyun asked with a slight smile. "Educational?" Day replied diplomatically. Yoon chuckled. "I heard she thinks we are all liars and storytellers, that our combat records are fairy tales." "She is entitled to her opinion, Commander." "That she is." Yun leaned back in her chair. "But opinions change when reality comes knocking. Let us hope for her sake that reality stays away from this station." Day nodded and took his assignment datapad. Night Patrol, sections 12 through 18. Easy duty. Nothing ever happened on the research station. Over the next few weeks, Hana continued her research. She interviewed various species about their perceptions of human warriors, cataloging what she called the mythology of the Death Worlder. She collected hundreds of stories, each one more unbelievable than the last. Humans who fought for hours with broken bones. Humans who tracked enemies across entire continents. Humans who refused to surrender even when defeat was certain. Humans who protected their wounded at the cost of their own lives. It is classic hero worship, Hana explained to Juno as they worked in their shared laboratory. Every culture creates legends about its warriors. The Skrell tell stories about their conquest fleets. The Korthans sing songs about their ancient battle kings. Humans are no different. But the human records are more detailed than most, Juno pointed out, scanning through another historical file. They have video documentation, medical records, tactical analyses, which makes them better storytellers. Not better warriors, Hana said dismissively. During this time, Hana occasionally encountered Dae Kim in the station corridors or in the communal dining area. He was always polite, always professional. He helped an elderly Vextar researcher carry equipment one day. He assisted with a minor technical problem in the observation deck another day. He was, in Hana's observation, exactly what she expected from an average human. Helpful, friendly, and completely ordinary. She did notice that Dae seemed to move with unusual efficiency. His steps were economical, his posture balanced. When he helped move equipment, he lifted with proper form, using his whole body rather than straining his back. Small details that suggested good training, but nothing exceptional. One evening, Hana sat in the station's small restaurant with a new acquaintance, a human civilian engineer named Mira Chai. Mira had struck up a conversation with Hana a few days earlier and seemed genuinely interested in her research, despite its critical view of human military mythology. So you think all the stories about the expansion wars are made up? Mira asked, sipping her tea. Not made up, Hana clarified. Exaggerated, misunderstood, viewed through the lens of cultural bias. Have you ever seen a human fight? Mira asked quietly. I have reviewed thousands of combat recordings, Hana replied. That is not what I asked. Mira set down her cup. Have you ever stood in the same room as a human who was fighting for their life? Hana hesitated. No. But scientific observation does not require personal experience. That is the point of objective analysis. Mira smiled, but there was something sad in her expression. I hope you never have to learn the difference, Dr. Ko. The conversation moved to other topics, but Mira's words stayed with Hana. That night, alone in her quarters, she reviewed more combat footage. She watched with her usual critical eye, noting inconsistencies, questioning dramatic moments, maintaining her professional skepticism. But for the first time, a small doubt crept into her mind. What if she was wrong? She dismissed the thought immediately. She was a scientist. Her conclusions were based on data, analysis, and rational thought. Feelings and doubts had no place in proper research. The station continued its peaceful routine. Researchers studied their subjects. Engineers maintained the systems. Security personnel walked their patrols. Hana worked on her comprehensive report that would, she believed, finally put the human warrior mythology to rest. She did not know that everything was about to change. She did not know that within days, she would see things that no amount of academic training could prepare her for. She did not know that the quiet, polite security officer she barely noticed would become the center of her new understanding of the universe. Reality, as Commander Yun had said, was about to come knocking. The alarm started at 0347 station time. Hana woke instantly, her forearms flailing in momentary confusion as the harsh warning klaxon echoed through her quarters. The lights flickered, then stabilized into emergency red. Her door chime sounded urgently. She opened it to find Juno standing in the corridor, her eyes wide with fear. What is happening? Hana asked, stepping out into the hallway. Attack, Juno said, her voice shaking. Pirates. The automated defenses are already down. Hana's academic mind struggled to process this information. Attacks on Galactic Council stations were extremely rare. The stations were neutral territory, protected by treaty and mutual agreement. Only the most desperate or foolish raiders would dare assault one. An explosion rocked the station. The floor tilted beneath them, and both Talvari grabbed the corridor wall for support. We need to get to the emergency shelters, Hana said, trying to remember the safety protocols from the orientation session she had barely paid attention to months ago. They moved through the corridors with dozens of other researchers and staff, all heading toward the designated safe zones. The station's automated systems had sealed many sections, forcing everyone into specific pathways. Hana could hear weapon fire in the distance, sharp cracks followed by the distinctive hum of energy shields. A security checkpoint appeared ahead. 2 Talvari guards and 1 Vextar stood behind a hastily erected barrier, their weapons trained down the opposite corridor. "Move quickly," one of the Talvari guards ordered. "The raiders have breached Section 4. We are holding here until everyone reaches the shelters." Hana and Juno hurried past the checkpoint with the other civilians. Behind them, Hana heard more weapons fire, closer now. She glanced back and saw armored figures emerging from a side corridor. The Skrell pirates were massive, their reptilian bodies covered in combat armor that gleamed under the emergency lights. The Talavari guards opened fire. Their weapons struck the Skrell shields, causing bright flashes but no apparent damage. The Vextar guard attempted to fall back, but a plasma bolt caught him in the chest. He went down without a sound. "Run!" One of the Talvari guards shouted at the civilians. Hana ran. Her academic dignity disappeared, replaced by pure survival instinct. Around her, other researchers fled in panic. A Korthan scholar stumbled and fell, and Hana stopped to help him up, her forearms making the task easier. More plasma fire erupted behind them. Hana did not look back this time. She kept moving forward, helping the injured Korthan along. They reached an intersection where the corridor split in 3 directions. A human security officer stood at the center, directing traffic with calm efficiency. It was Dae Kim. "Shelters are full in Section 7, he said, his voice steady despite the chaos. "Go left, follow the blue markers to Section 9. Move quickly, but do not run. Running causes panic, and panic kills people." Hana stared at him. He had a rifle slung across his back and a sidearm on his hip, but his hands were empty, focused on guiding civilians rather than preparing to fight. "Dr. Ko, you need to move," Dae said, meeting her eyes briefly. She nodded and followed his directions, pulling the Korthan scholar along. As they moved down the left corridor, Hana heard Dae's voice behind them, still calm, still directing people. Section 9's shelter was a reinforced laboratory that had been quickly converted into a safe room. Hana and Juno crowded inside with 50 other people. The door sealed with a heavy thud and the room fell into nervous silence. "We are trapped," Juno whispered. "We are protected," Hana corrected, though her own confidence was shaken. They waited. Minutes felt like hours. The shelter's walls were thick, but they could still hear muffled sounds from outside. Weapons fire, explosions, shouting in languages both familiar and alien. Then, silence. The silence was worse than the noise. A researcher near the door accessed the external security feed on a portable display. Images flickered across the screen, showing different sections of the station. Hana pushed closer to see. The feed showed devastation. Corridors damaged by plasma fire, equipment destroyed, bodies lying motionless in some sections, and everywhere Skrell pirates moving through the station in organized groups. But the feed also showed something else. Human security officers fighting back. Hana watched as Commander Yoon and 3 other humans defended a critical junction. They moved like nothing she had seen in her research footage. There was no hesitation, no wasted movement. They operated as a single unit, covering each other, communicating with minimal words. One of the humans took a plasma hit to the shoulder, the kind of hit that would incapacitate any Talvari instantly. The human staggered, switched his weapon to his other hand, and kept firing. "That is impossible," Hana murmured. "He should be in shock." "Humans can ignore pain," Mira's voice said from behind her. Hana had not realized the engineer was in the same shelter. "When they need to." The security feed switched to another section. Dae Kim appeared on the screen. He was alone, moving through a damaged corridor. His uniform was torn, and there was a dark burn mark across his left shoulder where plasma had grazed him. He should have been retreating to regroup with other security forces. Instead, he was hunting. Hana watched in fascination as Dae moved with predatory grace. He kept to the shadows, his steps silent despite the debris on the floor. He reached a junction and paused, listening. 2 Skrell pirates came around the corner, their weapons raised. What happened next took less than 10 seconds. But Hana knew she would remember every detail for the rest of her life. Dae did not reach for his rifle. Instead, he closed the distance between himself and the first Skrell in 2 rapid steps. His movements were precise and brutal. He struck the pirate's weapon arm, forcing the rifle down, then drove his elbow into the Skrell's throat with shocking force. As the first pirate stumbled back, Dae's leg swept out, taking the creature's legs from under it. The second Skrell fired, but Dae was already moving. He used the falling first pirate as a shield, then somehow twisted away from the line of fire. His hand found his sidearm, drew it with fluid speed and fired 3 shots at the second pirate. All 3 hit center mass. The Skrell's shields flared and failed. The creature went down. Day turned back to the first pirate, who was struggling to rise despite the crushed throat. Dai's expression was calm, almost serene. He fired once. The pirate stopped moving, then Day paused, swaying slightly. He put one hand against the wall to steady himself. His face showed pain for just a moment, then the calm mask returned. He checked his weapon, reloaded, and continued down the corridor. The shelter was completely silent. Everyone had watched the same feed. By the ancient lights, Juno whispered. What was that? That was a human fighting, Mira said quietly. That was a Deathworlder doing what Deathworlders do. Hana's mind struggled to reconcile what she had seen with everything she thought she knew. The academic distance she had maintained crumbled. This was not a recording she could analyze and dismiss. This was happening now, in the same station where she lived and worked. The security feed continued to show the battle unfolding throughout the station. The human security forces were vastly outnumbered, but they were holding. More than holding. They were pushing back. She saw a human with 2 broken fingers from a deflected plasma blast who kept fighting, using his rifle one-handed while his other hand hung useless at his side. She saw Commander Yun take a hit that should have killed her, watched the commander fall, then impossibly saw her get back up and continue directing her team. She saw humans covering wounded civilians with their own bodies, using themselves as shields. And she kept seeing Day, appearing in different sections of the station, always where the fighting was worst. He seemed to be everywhere at once, moving like a ghost through the chaos. Then the feed showed something that made Hana's blood run cold. A group of Skrell had cornered several civilians in a laboratory. The civilians included 2 Talvari researchers Hana knew personally. The Skrell were advancing, weapons raised. Day appeared behind them. He had no rifle now, having apparently lost it somewhere. He had his sidearm and a piece of broken metal pipe. Against 5 armored Skrell pirates, he should have had no chance. Hana watched him attack anyway. It was not the clean, efficient combat she had seen before. This was desperate and savage. Day shot the first Skrell in the back of the head, the shot finding the gap between helmet and armor. He clubbed the second with the pipe, denting the armor and sending the pirate sprawling. The third turned and fired, the blast catching Day in the side. Day did not go down. He charged forward, his face twisted in fury or pain or both, and tackled the Skrell. They went down together in a tangle of limbs. Somehow, impossibly, Day came up on top. His pipe rose and fell, once, twice, 3 times. The last 2 Skrell grabbed him, hauling him off their dead companion. One held him while the other prepared to deliver a killing shot. Then Commander Yun and 2 other humans burst into the laboratory. The firefight was brief and brutal. When it ended, all the Skrell were down. Day pulled himself to his feet. Even through the security feed's poor quality, Hana could see the blood covering his uniform. She did not know how much was his own. The commander said something to him. He shook his head. He checked on the civilians, made sure they were safe, then moved toward the door. Where is he going? Hana asked no one in particular. The station's medical bay was overwhelmed. Hana walked through the corridors 2 hours after the all-clear signal, still processing what she had witnessed. The attack was over, but the consequences were everywhere. Damaged walls, emergency repair crews working frantically, and the quiet efficiency of people dealing with trauma. She found Day in the medical bay, sitting on an examination table. A medical technician was trying to treat the plasma burn on his shoulder, but Day kept waving him away. Others need help more, Day said patiently. Sir, you have 2nd-degree burns and at least 3 broken ribs, the technician protested, and I am still breathing and conscious. Treat the Vextar in bed 6 first. He is not conscious. The technician looked frustrated but moved to the Vextar patient. Hana approached slowly, unsure what to say. Day noticed her and nodded. Dr. Ko, are you hurt? No, I was in the shelter. She stood awkwardly, her forearms fidgeting. I wanted to thank you for directing us to safety, for protecting the station. Just doing my job, Day said simply. Your job is patrol and security checks. Not, she struggled to find words. Not whatever I saw you doing on those security feeds. Day's expression remained neutral. My job is to protect this station and everyone on it. Sometimes that requires more than checking doors and monitoring cameras. Hana sat down on an empty chair near him. They sat in silence for a moment, surrounded by the quiet chaos of the medical bay. Finally, Hana spoke. "I need to understand," she said.
How did you keep fighting?
"I saw you take hits that should have incapacitated you. I saw you move with injuries that should have put you in shock." "How?" Day looked at her, really looked at her for the first time. His eyes were tired and pain creased the edges of his face, but his gaze was clear and steady. "Do you want the biological answer or the real answer?" he asked. "Both." He shifted on the table, wincing slightly. "Biologically, humans produce adrenaline and other hormones during stress. These temporarily block pain signals, increase strength, improve reflexes. Our bodies are designed to push past normal limits when survival is threatened. Most species have similar responses, but ours is more extreme. And the real answer? The real answer is that we evolved on a world that tried to kill us every single day for millions of years. We had predators that were faster, stronger, and better equipped than us. We survived by being too stubborn to die. That is not a choice, Dr. Ko. That is what we are." Hana absorbed this. "You said too stubborn to die like it is a survival trait." "Because it is. On Earth, humans were never the apex predator. We were prey that decided to fight back. We did not have claws or armor or venom. We had endurance and the refusal to quit. So when a predator chased us, we ran until the predator got tired. When something hurt us, we kept going until we found safety. When our tribe was threatened, we fought until either the threat was gone or we were dead." "That sounds exhausting." "It was. It is." Day allowed himself a small smile. "But we are still here." A human civilian, Mira Che, appeared from behind a privacy screen. She had been helping treat wounded patients. She joined their conversation, sitting down beside Hana. "Dr. Ko, you have been studying humans for years," Mira said gently. "But you have been studying data, not people. You analyzed combat recordings like they were abstract puzzles. You never asked yourself what it feels like to be in those situations." "I am a scientist," Hana said defensively. "Objective analysis requires distance." "Does it?" Mira challenged. "Or does objective analysis require understanding all the variables, including the ones you cannot measure with instruments?" Hana had no response to that. Day stood up carefully, testing his weight. "If you want to understand humans, Dr. Ko, you need to understand Earth. You need to know what kind of world creates beings like us." "Tell me," Hana said. So they did. Over the next hour, while the medical bay slowly brought order from chaos, Day and Mira told her about Earth. They told her about predators that hunted in packs, forcing humans to develop complex social structures and communication, about climate variations that could kill the unprepared, teaching humans to plan and adapt, about resource scarcity that created competition and innovation. They told her about humanity's history of conflict, not with pride, but with honest acceptance. Humans fought each other, learned from those fights, and developed strategies that became instinctive over generations. "We are not proud of our violent history," Mira said quietly, "but we cannot deny what it made us. Every human alive today carries the genes of survivors. People who ran when they needed to run, fought when they needed to fight, and endured when they needed to endure. The myths you have been studying are not myths," Day added. "They are just unusual to species that evolved on gentler worlds. To you, a soldier fighting for 3 days while carrying a wounded companion seems impossible. To us, that is just Tuesday, because our ancestors did exactly that kind of thing to survive." Hana felt something shift in her understanding. She thought about her lecture, about how confident she had been. How certain, how wrong. "I need to access the historical archives," she said suddenly. "The real ones, not the summaries and reports. I need to see the original documents from the expansion wars." Juno appeared at that moment. Looking for Hana, she had a datapad in her hands and an excited expression. "Dr. Ko, I found something in the medical reports from the attack." "The human casualty numbers make no sense. What do you mean?" Hana asked. 4 humans were seriously injured enough to require intensive care. But during the battle, I saw at least 12 humans take hits that should have required intensive care. The numbers do not match." "They got back up," Mira said simply. "They got hit, went down, and got back up to keep fighting. It is what we do." Juno looked at her in disbelief. "That is not biologically possible. And yet," Day said with a slight smile, "here we are." Over the next several days, as the station recovered and repaired, Hana threw herself into new research. But this time her approach was different. She did not look for ways to debunk or explain away the human combat records. Instead, she looked for understanding. She interviewed every human on the station who had fought in the battle. Their stories were remarkably consistent and remarkably unexaggerated. They spoke matter-of-factly about injuries and fear and the decision to keep fighting anyway. She reviewed Earth's evolutionary history with fresh eyes. The predator pressure, the environmental challenges, the constant state of survival. She began to see how these factors could shape a species over millions of years. She studied human psychology, learning about concepts like fight-or-flight response, about how human brains are wired to assess threats and react with exceptional speed, about how social bonds make humans willing to die for their groups. But the most enlightening moment came when she accessed combat footage from the original expansion wars, the wars that had built humanity's reputation. She watched hours of recordings, and this time she did not see exaggerations. She saw patterns, humans who fought while injured, not because they were superhuman, but because their bodies allowed them to temporarily ignore damage. Humans who continued missions that other species had abandoned, not because they were stupid, but because they calculated risks differently. Humans who protected their wounded at tremendous personal cost, not because they were irrational, but because their evolutionary history made group survival more important than individual survival. She saw Day's face in 100 different human faces across 200 years of history. The same calm determination, the same refusal to quit, the same willingness to face impossible odds. One evening, she found Day in the observation deck looking out at the stars. He was still recovering, moving carefully, but he was back on light duty. "I owe you an apology," Hannah said, joining him at the window. "For what?" Day asked. "For treating your species' combat history as mythology, for assuming that different meant exaggerated, for not trying to understand before I judged." Day was quiet for a moment. "You were not entirely wrong, you know. Humans do exaggerate sometimes. Stories get bigger in the telling. Heroes become legends. But the core is true," Hannah said. "The impossible things you do are not impossible for you. They are just extremely difficult for everyone else." "I suppose that is fair." Hannah looked at him. "The pirates are coming back, are they not? Their leader said they would return with a war fleet." Day's expression hardened slightly. "Yes, our intelligence suggests they will return in approximately 48 hours. The station's faster-than-light communications are still damaged. We cannot call for reinforcements in time, so you will fight again, against even worse odds." "Yes." "And you will win or die trying." "Yes." Hannah felt a strange mix of emotions. Fear, certainly, but also something like awe. She was standing next to a being whose entire species was shaped by the simple refusal to surrender. "I want to help," she said. "I do not know how, but I want to help defend the station." Day looked at her with something like respect. "That means a lot, Dr. Ko. But civilians should stay in the shelters. That is where you can help most. I am not talking about fighting. I am talking about using my knowledge. I have studied Skrell tactics extensively. I understand their psychology, their combat patterns. I can help predict what they will do." Day considered this. "Talk to Commander Yoon. If she can use your expertise, she will." The Skrell war fleet arrived exactly when intelligence predicted. 6 warships emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the sensor range, and the station's alarms began their familiar wailing. This time, Hannah was not in her quarters. She was in the Security Command Center with Commander Yoon, Day, and 2 other human officers. Hannah's expertise on Skrell psychology had earned her a place at the tactical table. 6 ships, Commander Yoon said, studying the sensor display. Approximately 300 raiders. We have 15 humans capable of combat, 53 other personnel who can hold a weapon if needed, and whatever tricks we can pull from thin air. They will start with a show of force, Hannah said, her 4 hands moving over her datapad. Skrell tactics favor intimidation first. They want us to surrender before they have to fight. As if on cue, the communication system crackled to life. The Skrell commander's face appeared on the screen, his reptilian features twisted into what might have been a smile. "Station personnel, this is Fleet Commander Cross of the Skrell Confederacy. You humiliated my scouts. You killed my warriors. For this insult, I will take your station and everyone on it. You have one option. Surrender now and I will only execute the security forces. Resist and everyone dies." Commander Yoon's finger hovered over the response button, but Day placed a hand on her arm. "Let me," he said quietly. Yun nodded and stepped back. Day activated the communication channel. His voice was calm, almost conversational. "Commander Cross, this is Corporal Day Kim, Station Security. I have a counteroffer. Turn your fleet around, leave this sector, and never come back. Do that. And we will not destroy your ships and kill your warriors." The Skrell commander's laughter echoed through the command center. "You threaten me? You? With your pathetic defenses and your handful of Deathworlders? I will enjoy watching you die, human. Then come and try," Dee replied simply, and cut the connection. Commander Yun looked at him. "Feel better?" "Not really, but it gave our teams an extra 2 minutes to finish the preparations." The command center became a flurry of controlled activity. Humans moved with purpose, checking weapons, confirming trap placements, reviewing defensive positions. Hana watched in fascination. There was no panic, no dramatic speeches, just professionals preparing to do a job that would probably kill them. "Dr. Ko," Commander Yun said, pulling her attention back. "You said Skrell favor intimidation. What comes next?" "They will send a large initial force to test our defenses. Overwhelming numbers meant to break morale. If we hold, they will shift to more tactical approaches." "Good. Then we let them think the first assault worked." Coordinate with your teams. Fighting retreat, make it look desperate. Pull them deep into the station, then spring the traps." Day nodded and began issuing orders through his communicator. The attack came 30 minutes later. Skrell raiders poured into the station through multiple breach points. Hana watched the security feeds from the command center, her heart's racing. The human security teams engaged immediately, but they were falling back, seemingly overwhelmed. Hana saw Day's team fire a few shots, then retreat down a corridor. The Skrell pursued, confident in their superior numbers. "Now," Commander Yun said quietly into her communicator. The corridor Day had retreated down suddenly sealed at both ends. Emergency protocols that should have been disabled instead activated with lethal efficiency. Atmosphere vented from the sealed section. The Skrell raiders inside scrambled for cover, but there was none. Within seconds, that entire assault group was neutralized. Similar scenes played out across the station. The humans had turned every corridor, every laboratory, every junction into a potential death trap. They used the station itself as a weapon, but the Skrell kept coming. 300 raiders could absorb losses that would break any other force. A second wave hit Section 12, where Mira and several other civilians were coordinating medical support. Hana watched the feed in horror as Skrell breached the medical station's outer defenses. "Section 12 needs support," Hana said urgently. "We have no one to send," Commander Yun replied, her voice tight with stress. "Everyone is engaged." "I will go," Hana said, surprising herself. "Doctor, you are not trained for combat. Neither are the civilians in Section 12. But I know Skrell psychology. I can buy time until support arrives." Yun looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. "Take this." She handed Hana a small plasma pistol. "Point and shoot. Try not to hit any of our people." Hana ran through the corridors, following the route on her datapad. She reached Section 12 just as the Skrell were breaching the inner door. Mira and 3 other civilians were pulling wounded patients behind whatever cover they could find. Hana aimed her pistol and fired. The shot went wide, missing the Skrell entirely, but it got their attention. 2 of the raiders turned toward her. This was a terrible idea, Hana thought, firing again. This shot hit one of the Skrell's shields. The raider roared and charged toward her. Hana ran. Behind her, she heard the heavy footsteps of her pursuer. She ran down the corridor, her forearms pumping, her breath coming in gasps. She had no combat training, no experience with tactical movement. She had only fear, and the desperate hope that she was leading the Skrell away from the wounded civilians. She turned a corner and ran straight into Day. He caught her with one arm, steadying her, then gently but firmly pushed her behind him. He was battered and bleeding, his armor scorched in multiple places, but his expression was calm. The Skrell raider rounded the corner at full charge. Day did not have his rifle. He had a combat knife and a nearly empty pistol. Against an armored Skrell warrior in close quarters, he should have been dead. But Hana had learned that should did not apply to humans the way it did to other species. Day moved like water, flowing around the Skrell's charge. His knife found the gap between helmet and chest armor. The blade went in once, twice. The Skrell stumbled, confused that this small human was still standing, still fighting, still dangerous. Day's pistol came up, pressed against the gap his knife had made, and fired. The Skrull went down. Are you hurt? Day asked Hana, already checking for injuries. No, I led them away from the medical station. That was brave and foolish in equal measure, Day said, but there was warmth in his voice. Come on, we need to get back to the civilians. They returned to Section 12 together. The Skrull assault on that position had been repelled, though the cost was evident. One civilian was dead, 3 others injured. Mira was holding pressure on a wound in her side but still working to treat another patient. You came back, Mira said to Hana, her voice strained. I am not a warrior, Hana replied, helping her apply bandages, but I could not hide while others fought. That is how it starts, Mira said with a weak smile. The battle raged for hours. The command center's displays showed the fighting spreading through every section of the station. The human security forces were performing miracles, but miracles had limits. Commander Yun fell in Section 7, defending an evacuation route. She took 6 Skrull with her before a plasma cannon finally brought her down. Day assumed command without ceremony or hesitation. The humans were down to 8 combat-capable security officers. The Skrull still had over 100 raiders operational. We cannot hold much longer, one of the human officers reported to Day. His name was Tae Sung, and he had burns across half his face that should have sent him to medical hours ago. We do not need to hold much longer, Day replied. We just need to hold long enough. Long enough for what? Hana asked. Long enough for them to realize they cannot win, Day said. Cross sent 300 raiders. He has lost almost 200. At some point the cost becomes too high even for revenge. Skrull do not retreat, Hana said. Their culture considers retreat the ultimate dishonor. Everyone retreats when they are losing badly enough, Day said grimly. The Skrull fleet commander sent his final assault. 100 raiders, everything he had left, in a concentrated push toward the station's command center. If they took control of the command center, they could override all the defensive systems and seal the station's fate. Day organized the last defensive line. 8 humans, 5 armed civilians including Mira and Hana with her pistol she had learned to aim properly over the past hours. This is it, Day said quietly. They break through here and we lose the station. We hold here and they lose the will to keep fighting. Then we hold, Tay said simply. The Skrull came like a wave. The fighting was close and brutal. Hana fired her pistol until it overheated, then used a piece of debris as a club when a Skrull got too close. She was terrified beyond anything she had ever experienced. But she fought anyway because the humans around her were fighting and she could not bear to do less. She saw Day everywhere, impossible as that should have been. He appeared wherever the line was weakest, shoring up defenses, covering wounded, taking impossible risks that somehow paid off. She saw Tay, his burned face a mask of pain and determination, hold a doorway alone against 4 Skrull raiders. He fell, but the doorway held. She saw Mira, engineer turned warrior, use her technical knowledge to turn the station's own systems into weapons, and she understood, finally and completely, what she had been trying to study from safe academic distance. These were not myths or exaggerations. This was the reality of a species that survived by refusing to surrender. The medical bay was quieter now, 3 days after the battle. The emergency had passed, replaced by the slower work of healing and recovery. Hana moved between beds, helping where she could. Her 4 arms made her useful for tasks that required multiple hands, and the medical staff had gratefully accepted her volunteer work. She found Day in Recovery Room 3. He was finally receiving proper treatment for injuries that would have killed most species twice over. His left arm was in a regeneration sleeve. Burns on his torso were slowly healing under medical wraps, and he had 3 cracked ribs that made every breath painful. He was reading a report on a data pad when she entered. You are supposed to be resting, Hana said gently. I am sitting down. That counts as resting. Day set the data pad aside. How are you, Dr. Ko? Sore, tired, alive. She sat in the chair beside his bed, still trying to understand everything that happened. Did you find your answers? Hana was quiet for a moment, gathering her thoughts. I found something more important than answers. I found humility and understanding. Tell me. For years, I studied your species from a distance. I analyzed data, reviewed records, and drew conclusions based on what I thought was objective analysis. But I was not being objective. I was being arrogant. I assumed that because something seemed impossible to me, it must be impossible to everyone. It is a common mistake, Day said, but it is a dangerous one. I mocked the myths of human warriors. I told my colleagues and students that your combat records were exaggerated. I never considered that perhaps the only thing exaggerated was my own understanding. Day smiled slightly, though it clearly hurt to do so. So what do you understand now? That you are exactly what the stories say you are. Not because the stories exaggerate, but because I underestimated what a species shaped by a death world could become. You can ignore pain not through some magical ability, but because your nervous system evolved to prioritize survival over comfort. You can fight while injured because your bodies produce chemicals that temporarily suppress damage feedback. You refuse to surrender because your ancestors who surrendered did not survive to pass on their genes. That is the biological explanation, Day said. What about the real one? Hana met his eyes. The real explanation is that you are terrifying and wonderful and completely impossible by the standards of any other species I have studied. You should not be able to do the things you do, but you do them anyway because you do not know how to quit. Is that going in your report? Yes, along with a formal retraction of every dismissive thing I have ever published about human combat capability. Day looked surprised. That will damage your academic reputation. My reputation deserves to be damaged. I was wrong. Spectacularly, dangerously wrong. And I need to make that clear to everyone who trusted my research. Mira entered the room, moving carefully. The plasma wound in her side was healing, but she was still in pain. She carried a data pad and a determination that reminded Hana of the humans during the battle. I thought I would find you two together, Mira said, sitting down with a wince. I have been working on something. A memorial for those we lost. How many? Hana asked quietly. 4 humans from security. Commander Yoon, Tai, Bora, and Jin. 11 other personnel from various species. 23 injured seriously enough to require long-term care. The numbers hit hard. Hana had known some of those people, had worked with them, shared meals with them. Now they were statistics in the aftermath of violence. They will be remembered, Day said softly. Speaking of memory, Mira said, I heard that Galactic Council reinforcements arrived this morning, and they brought someone specifically to speak with you, Dr. Ko. Hana felt her stomachs tighten. Who? Your department chair from the Xenoanthropology Institute, Professor Lyra Chen. The name made Hana's anxiety spike. Professor Chen was a stern, traditional academic who valued reputation and established research above all else. If she had come personally, it meant Hana's career was likely over. I should go meet with her, Hana said, standing. Want me to come with you? Mira offered. No, but thank you. This is something I need to face alone. Professor Chen was waiting in what remained of the station's conference room. She was Talvari like Hana, but older, with the bearing of someone who had spent decades in academic circles. Her forearms were folded in a posture that suggested displeasure. Dr. Ko, she said formally, I have been reviewing your preliminary reports. They are quite different from your previous work. Yes, Professor. I have had reason to revise my conclusions about human combat psychology. Revise? Chen's voice was cold. You have completely reversed every major finding from years of research. You are claiming that the very myths you spent your career debunking are in fact accurate. They are not myths, Professor. They are documented biological and psychological traits that I failed to properly understand. Failed to understand or simply changed your mind after a traumatic experience? Dr. Ko, you experience violence firsthand. That is hardly the foundation for objective scientific analysis. Hana felt anger rising, but she kept her voice level. With respect, Professor, my previous analysis lacked a crucial element. I studied humans as abstract data points. I never considered what their capabilities actually meant in practical application. Science requires distance, Dr. Ko. Science requires truth, Professor. And the truth is that I was wrong. Chen was silent for a moment, studying her. If you publish these retractions, your reputation will be destroyed. Your research will be questioned. Your career will suffer. I know. And you still intend to proceed? I do, because the alternative is allowing my flawed research to continue influencing academic understanding of humans. That could have real consequences. People need to know what humans are capable of, not to fear them, but to respect them, to understand them. Professor Chen's expression softened slightly. You have changed, Dr. Ko. I have learned, Professor. There is a difference. Very well. I will not stop you from publishing your retractions, but I expect your new research to be thorough, well documented, and beyond reproach. If you are going to overturn established academic consensus, you had better do it properly. Hana felt relief wash through her. Thank you, Professor. Do not thank me yet. You have made your career much more difficult, but perhaps that is what good science requires sometimes. The courage to admit when we are wrong. 6 months passed. The station was repaired, its scars hidden behind new bulkheads and fresh paint. Life returned to something resembling normal, though everyone who had survived the battles carried invisible marks. Hana stood before a new audience at the Galactic Council Research Center. This lecture hall was larger than the one where she had first presented her dismissive findings about human warriors. The audience was larger too, filled with academics who had heard about her dramatic reversal. Juno sat in the front row, recovered from her injuries and still serving as Hana's research assistant. Mira was there too, having accepted a permanent position at the station. And in the back, trying to be inconspicuous, sat Lieutenant Dae Kim. He had been promoted after Commander Yun's death and now led station security. Hana began her presentation. 18 months ago, I stood before my colleagues and argued that the combat capabilities attributed to humans were myths and exaggerations. I was confident in my analysis, I was thorough in my research, and I was completely wrong. She brought up the holographic display, showing not combat footage but biological data, psychological profiles, evolutionary histories. Humans are death worlders, not in the poetic sense but in the literal, scientific meaning. They evolved on a planet with extreme environmental pressures, high predator density, and constant resource competition. Every trait that makes them formidable in combat is a direct result of millions of years of evolutionary pressure. She walked the audience through her new findings. The adrenaline response that allowed pain suppression, the neurological adaptations that enabled rapid threat assessment, the social bonding that made humans willing to die for their groups, the persistence that came from being persistence hunters, who literally chased prey to exhaustion. But data alone cannot convey what these traits mean in practice, Hana continued. I witnessed humans fight against impossible odds. I saw them take injuries that should have been fatal and continue fighting. I watched them refuse to surrender even when surrender was the logical choice. She paused, making sure she had everyone's attention. And here is what I learned. Humans are not uniquely violent. Many species are more aggressive. They are not uniquely strong. Many species are more powerful. They are not uniquely intelligent. Many species are smarter. What makes humans unique is their refusal to accept defeat. They will fight past exhaustion, past injury, past the point where any other species would quit, not because they are suicidal, but because their evolutionary history taught them that the only true failure is stopping before you have to. The lecture continued for another hour. Hana presented evidence, answered questions, and defended her new conclusions with the same rigor she had once used to attack them. When it ended, the response was mixed. Some academics accepted her findings, others remained skeptical. But no one could deny that her research was thorough. After the lecture, Hana found Dae waiting outside the hall.